We got Don. Do we have Don in here too?
Oh, didn't he make
Yeah,
it after
I'm
all?
riding back home in Discord.
We're on Eevee Mux. Do you want to come into Eevee Mux with us?
It's like after my shower and I get back home, yeah, I'll jump on, but I'm nasty.
Okay.
Another weekend day turns birthday.
Okay. Well, let me get back to them on Eevee Mux. I guess we'll see you in a little bit.
Yeah. Who are you with?
It's me, Brett, and Peter right now.
Oh, Brett, this is late for Brett, isn't it?
No, I'm early before you guys. It's
Yeah,
6.
he's California.
He says he's early. It's fine.
It's 3 hours,
Shit. Okay, fuck.
4 hours behind you.
Okay, so I'll see what I can do. I'm just finishing up now. Okay.
Okay. I'm just gonna mute myself on here. I can still hear you talking, so we're gonna go ahead and.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll just go somewhere else. I'm just gonna skip.
Okay.
I'll be back in a minute. You go ahead, and I'll join you. I'm just gonna.
Oh, you're fine.
Turn off my camera.
We're just hanging out, so we can cut anything we want to from the video. It's not a big deal, and not to mention people watching. It'll be okay. We'll have a good time. We're all having a good time.
We going out live?
What's
Okay.
that now?
We're going out live, are we?
Hold on now. Brett's gonna take charge.
Yep, I'm good. I'm good to go.
Did you throw that announcements in the?
Yeah, it should be. If you go to Discord under announcements, I put a little thing. I called it "Exploring Thought," and then the YouTube link should be below that. So we should be good to go.
Wait a second.
Let me make this full screen. Okay.
Where'd you go, Peter?
I'm just gonna have a quick smoke. I'll be back in a minute.
Oh, okay. Alrighty. Well, guys, welcome to my channel, the Thomas Panther Pangburn Experience. That's not what it's called, but there's no name for my channel. It's just Thomas's Place. That's great and just good enough. My friend Brett here is going to be holding the reins, everybody. So we're going to talk about, I assume, mostly political thinking, but we're also going to talk a little bit about what thought is itself, what thinking is. The problem with that is we would also have to get into what theory of mind is. We'd have to get a little bit into linguistics, and we'd have to get a little bit into how thoughts compose themselves. So it's a very deep topic that I'm most likely going to cover later in episodes on my show. But we'll get into a little bit here. We'll define a few of the concepts and just talk about them and see what fun we can have with it. But Brett?
Hey, guys. Thanks for mentioning it, Thomas. Yeah, I've been wanting to do an episode about this topic for a while, and I do want to start off by acknowledging and agreeing with what you just said. There's a lot of ways we could go with this, many subtopics that could be investigated, and it really could, be a multi-episode, over several months series. I think for even tonight, just doing, a basic kind of definition like we looked up of what technically thought and thinking are and how they function, and then going down a few topics that we were collaborating on over the last day or two, just related to thinking and thought in the modern day. I would definitely at one point in our time together love to talk about how thought and thinking are being affected by, stuff online, social media and such, and how we get into these echo chambers and they are being perpetuated by the very, media companies that we've come to adore just because we get to watch videos and talk to each other on them. But at the same time, we're not seeing, always different content. Often we're seeing just the same stuff that we, we do a search and then we, get more videos like it. But before we go too far down the rabbit hole, Peter has also joined us. Peter, how we doing?
Not too bad. I've been worse.
Got
some gems in here. So
yeah. Send us some digital Jameson. How's that sound?
That's it. It's all ones and zeros when I go.
Service all up.
Nice. One day when we do get together in person, that's gonna be yes. Okay, Thomas, are you cool if we start with the I like the idea of the article you sent with the first couple of paragraphs.
The outline of thought. Yeah, everybody, if you want to go and get a good general sense of what thinking is. Wikipedia has a lot of good articles, a lot of good, well sourced articles. I mean, sometimes on Wikipedia you can't chase the source all the way back down to it's perfect, but it it's not perfect. But go read. It's just called Outline of Thought, and it goes through the nature of thought. It goes through different things like aspects of what a thinker agency is, and all of these different things. I'm just going to skim the top really quick. Um, because thought can be thought of as intrapersonal and interpersonal in an intersubjective space with multiple agents. So it gets pretty complex when you throw all that other stuff in. But I mean, thought is just a mental process. That's a very important word. It's a mental process in which entities form psychological associations, and models of the world. So when you're thinking, you're abstracting a model of something. You're abstracting a framework. You're abstracting a definition. You're abstracting. You are quote unquote creating a mental process to represent something that you either experience in reality or something that you might think you could experience in reality. That's the basis of what thought is.
I think that's a really good place to start, especially with the last part you said there, where what's actually happening versus what we think could be happening.
Mhm.
Um, Different interpretations that people can have of phenomena, outside phenomena, whether it's events, past events we've had happen to ourselves, and trying to decipher that in the present moment, like of today. Um, yeah, and I think that the fact that there's discrepancies between people, you can see the same event from two people and yet have two completely different perspectives as to how that occurred can
Yeah.
be good for diversity, but it also can be really challenging because you're trying to agree on those paradigms and the set of truths that you were kind of alluding to, like what is real, I guess you could say.
Well, and you used that term a moment ago, and I think we should go ahead and just point out the philosophical term usage of phenomena.
Hmm.
Phenomena is anything that we take in through our senses or our mind, or mind and senses. That is phenomena. The noumena, as Immanuel Kant would say, is that which is by itself, that which is in and of itself, without anyone sensing or thinking about it. So imagine a tree out in the middle of the forest. Nobody's there looking at it. No one is observing it. No squirrel, no bird. It's just there by itself. Does it exist as a thing in itself? Is it real? These are philosophical questions that a lot of German idealists attempted to answer by strictly rational thinking.
Mm. And so is part of the challenge there the fact that there's not a full concrete answer, or where do you see it
Yeah, I
being?
mean that's what the ideal people who are idealists and continental philosophers, not all, of course, would make the argument that no, the tree might not be there. It might just be our minds that create the universe. There are different ways that they go about answering the problems of that, but I'm an analytical philosopher and I'm a scientist, so I care about those, and a pragmatist, of course. I care about those usefulnesses and outcomes rather than I do dealing with idealism and the skepticism that comes along with, oh, are we actually seeing reality as it truly is? Maybe not, but we are, I think, doing the best that we can with the little pinhole that we're looking through at reality that we have, you know.
It is because the the asteroid that was heading towards Earth. Well, the dinosaurs didn't know about it,
Oh well, no.
but because they weren't aware of it, did it not exist?
That's true, that's true,
Yeah.
that's true.
Like,
They found out real quick.
hey,
There
see
you
that
go.
coming.
Okay.
I guess they weren't aware of it. Yeah, it did exist besides their awareness of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious question to those idealists is, if before there were any conscious beings, just when the universe was just like hot matter, was
Hmm.
there
It,
was everything just mind? That
And in,
there's no way to even parse that.
well, it was there, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe
yeah.
it was all mind. Maybe it's just all mind. I don't know. Who cares?
And when you
But
say conscious beings, are you specifically referring to us as Homo sapiens because we don't
Asia,
know about animal consciousness, if there is any.
Yeah, I mean, an agent would be the general term, like a bird is an agent, right?
Mm.
But if we're talking mainly about human thinking and cognition.
Hmm. That's definitely where I would like to focus, just because, like you said, there's a lot of different departments or subcategories that we could go down.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, the human aspect that we're in this world right now. We have a decent idea of how we've gotten here, but at the same time, we also notice that thoughts can become words and language, and then into actions. And while that's a really beautiful thing, because we're literally talking to each other on technology that was created like by people like ourselves, at the same time, the lot of the distortion going on, I think, is something that should be acknowledged. And like we said earlier, where there's a ton of subtopics we could go into, but maybe we picked a couple we think are more specific that we feel like could create good conversation and kind of go from there. We could talk about the dinosaurs and whether or not they knew the asteroid was gonna.
Well, if you're talking about, yeah, does it
He
exist?
was just making a joke. Like it didn't
Oh,
matter about their mind dependence. The asteroid was still coming.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Um,
it wasn't even a joke. I was trying to make a point with
is
it,
yeah,
is
I
but
got
that
it.
I kept making funny.
Yeah.
like not to get too political, but is that the equivalent of the people who say that global warming doesn't exist, and then
Well,
the hurricane comes and it's like, oh,
I would like to think that most people are more educated than dinosaurs, but we might have a problem there.
yeah,
Yeah, but
well,
still, I mean, if we didn't know it was coming,
yeah.
it wouldn't have been that long ago.
Well,
Not that long ago at all that we wouldn't have seen something coming.
yeah, well, part
Like,
of part of that scenario there, right, is our inability to see beyond our immediate horizon to accurately or really, care about future events that are so large that we feel like we have no control over.
well, there
And
will
again,
be
if you
those.
think I'm off, take me off on a tangent here and see what your
No,
thoughts are.
go for it. Your show.
But it's like that could be a good point to say, like, we struggle. First of all, dopamine and immediate gratification on social media, I don't think is the best thing,
No,
because it doesn't have standards as to what is potentially true versus factual, and what resources you're looking at. Cheers, mate. And what you're examining. But like I said earlier, the echo chambers that we live within, including myself, right? We go to watch videos, and then YouTube and the different algorithms on the social media
yeah,
companies give
yeah,
us similar
potential.
content. um, I don't know that that's giving us the full spectrum of different topics to explore, like it would be where you, Thomas, you do great work of looking up the different scientists and other fellows and theories to compare them, and then you come to understand, okay, this is one that this person had in this century, here's another one that was that disproved it a century later.
Yep.
What is the scientific method for looking through those things,
Yep.
and not just factual evidence, but actually, again, making the conscious effort, I would say, that you do. And I don't know if you believe that or not, because we don't need to go into free will, but like you make an effort to go look at all of those topics because you care about the integrity of the topics you're talking about.
I do.
But to be able to
I do.
look at both sides of the argument,
You need to always know your counter arguments. You need to always know the opposite positions in every piece of philosophy and science that you come across. Try to be as well educated about the counter options, the counter arguments, things
that's
like
that's
that.
the main problem politically and on social media
Hmm.
as well. Is that
Yeah.
most people aren't willing to look at the counter arguments to their
Some
position.
of them might be shit, but some of them might actually be worth
Yeah,
considering. So it
so
really just
that's
depends.
Yeah. Like for example, I mean, if we're just going to go all over the place for a little bit, but then also we have other topics we can come back to, you
it's
know,
like the left, the right isn't always wrong, and the left isn't always right.
yes,
you know,
that's true. And like I want to talk about all of the avenues of something like gun control or gun use in the United States society. I don't know, Peter, in the area of Great Britain.
I'm in Ireland, but yeah,
Okay.
you have a very unique thing going on there with
Yeah.
guns.
And I want to talk about that in order to, like, there's the Second Amendment, there's different rights people have, there's self-protection, there's, the criminal element, there's like what's legal, not legal. I want to discuss all those things. But when someone legitimately says to me that they believe that Alex Jones revealed that Sandy Hook was, his insane conspiracy, I can't take that seriously, because there's a certain level of malice towards truth where they automatically start out to say the government is lying about every single thing. Now,
But
it could be, but it's just like I can't start from that pinpoint, because you see where I'm
could
going
you
with
even
that.
start from the pinpoint of where did he actually come? How did he come to the conclusion? So,
Thinking wise.
what evidence did he look at, and in
Yeah,
what biased way did he look at the evidence in
yeah.
order to come to that conclusion initially
Yeah, and
that it
the
was a hoax?
fact that I think this would be a good transition here, because I absolutely do not want to even give that airtime at all, besides saying it right there. But like the fact that you can present information online, and the negativity bias, right, Thomas, of like it takes,
Mhm.
what is it, like, so you get 6 or 8 things. One positive thing is great, but then like,
It's another form of counting the hits and ignoring the misses, or counting the misses and ignoring the
yeah,
hits. It's just another of that type of fallacy. It's like only looking at the negative portions of information that you gain. And of course, the negativity is going to be based on the person interpreting the data.
and it's going to get more clicks.
It will get more clicks because people are interested in drama.
Exactly. And regardless of whether the drama or not is factually peer reviewed, what are the other words I should use here? But that it is actually real,
Well sourced.
well sourced.
Yeah.
And the fact that that is not a standard on places like YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or wherever else it is, you know, people talk about free speech, which is definitely, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution is very important. But we
It,
are dealing with a situation where just because something has the most views, it doesn't mean that there's actually any credibility to it whatsoever. And that, to me, is something that needs to be questioned, in part because right now within, and I don't know how much we want to talk about it, but in United States politics, the political parties cannot agree on the color of grass.
Yeah.
And the average person is sitting like, housing is expensive, food is expensive, jobs are, challenging in many different sectors of the economy.
My
um,
life's hard. Yeah.
and it
That's
it
what they would say.
yeah, and if you had some kind of, you know political figure who would go to, discuss those kind of things, you might actually have somebody who could win very easily. But that right now they're still just going at each other and doing character assassinations. Notice how they don't talk about the topics that they are endorsing in many of the campaign, advertisements or discussions they do.
Hmm.
They're somewhat doing it, but there's also still the circus show where, the spectrums of either political party, their thinking is okay. Let's try to not be judgmental here. All humans have tribal thinking, right? We are susceptible to that because of whatever it is from East Africa 100,000 years ago. We have doubt, we have belief, we believe our tribe versus the other tribe, us versus them. There's many factors that affect our thinking in that way. But one of the challenges we're facing is that with either extreme end of the political spectrum going on to different, social media outlets and whatnot, they're not. I don't find that they're very concerned about what is true, what is factually evident, whatever the words would be to, present those factors. They want a certain narrative to be the narrative.
yes, I mean, look at Discovery Science Channel and see how much bullshit is on that kind of thing. This is the Science Channel, and they're
Yeah.
fucking there's
Science education is
so
is a largely lacking thing, and the science education teaches you how to be meticulous with data, how to search
Mhm.
and resource
Yeah.
your information, how to to document your information. These things
But
like
it just goes to
logical
show
thinking
how
skills.
little respect there is for actual factual,
Hmm.
or it just it then censoring. Like, I mean, they'll tell some of the news, like, I mean, media, the news media will tell you some of the news, and they'll actually retract anything that happened in the news that, you know, fucks with their narrative.
And will not keep their audience.
We need honest news, whether it's
We need well reasoned thinkers. We need well reasoned thinkers. We need people who are critical thinkers, skeptics, individual thinkers. And what I mean by that is don't just eschew tradition completely. I mean, there's reasons why we have scientific models that work. You don't just throw them out like garbage.
like
Um, Go ahead.
they shut down a shit ton of mosques in Germany because of extremism.
Really?
There recently, a couple of weeks ago, last week I think it was, and that just did not make the news in most media circles because that
I'm
would
sure.
be Islamophobic.
Mm.
It would like well, we can't say this because it's gonna, you know, raise tensions or so. So anything that's like that gets usually just deleted from the general
Yeah.
news cycle, and I don't think that's healthy either.
Let's let Brett weigh in here.
Yeah, no, no, I agree with Peter. The networks. I don't. Okay, one could argue that news all the way back to the printing press and before, first from the Chinese and then over to Gutenberg, 1300s or so, give or take. But obviously, news existing in other forms before that, relaying information. One could argue that there's always a certain amount of bias that human beings present in a given material, because of the fact that we're fallible. But at the same time, modern news, the only one I can speak of because I live, in the modern time and seeing it firsthand. Modern news is like Peter said, is not always about telling the entirety of the story, because if they tell the entirety of the story and it's either perceived as wrong, boring, or irrelevant, whatever it is, their viewership could easily drop. And modern news for the most part is for profit. Am I
But
would
they also
you agree?
don't trust the intelligence of the people who are watching it.
Mhm.
People will do this if they see this, or people will do that if they see that. So we can't show anything in that light. Or
Brett,
if we say this, then people will become racist. Or if we say this, people become fucking, you know. Okay.
no, I get you. I get you.
Yeah.
The best way to teach critical thinking skills to younger people, Brett, that I've learned, and I'm sure you've dealt with way more people than I have. I've tutored people at college and stuff with like mathematics and shit, but I've never had a teaching job. But critical thinking allows you to think about what was said. Like you get a proposition. The sun is hot. If you're a critical thinker, you're going to be like, is the sun hot? There's a bit of skepticism. You go and look into a book, you realize the sun is this many degrees, you do all this. Okay, the sun is hot, right? You've sourced your data, you've compared it with other data, you've talked to other people who might be experts in the field about the data, right? So now, and you can also feel and experience it when you walk outside. So, like, now you have all this evidence and backing for the sun is hot. That's a way to be a critical thinker, to just think of every little proposition in your life that maybe confuses you, or maybe any, just attack it like a shark and seek out ways to prove yourself incorrect, as in go look at other articles that may prove it wrong, right? Go look at sources that are deep in the internet that may be like from a scientific journal 3 or 4 or 5 links away, right? You've got to get good at being able to do that, at being able to trace down sources to really know what's going on in the world. Because otherwise, you may just become prey to social media news propagation, and that's not going to get you anything.
Yeah, and it also it you know the ability to look at multiple sources, as you and Peter were both, I think, alluding to a little bit earlier,
Hmm.
different ways. Like, do people do that organically on their own? And
No, it's uncomfortable for them.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because and this is where, if you get into thoughts like a little away from the political and news, but like a person's cultural upbringing or a person's religious beliefs or their political beliefs or their economic beliefs or their literal socialization of the differences between the one team in a soccer or baseball or football league for kids,
Yeah.
where the one team has good sportsmanship and the other one was told, you are literally trying out for the MLB. You need to take this as serious as possible, and you really don't even shake their hands on the other side. Which to me, I'll just say as a liberal beta male teacher, the second group is terrible.
Yeah. Isn't it
Like,
weird that we can have? Isn't it weird that all of our games are based on us versus them? But when
yeah,
you're talking about a
yes,
cooperating society, you don't want a us versus them. You
yes,
know,
yeah,
but it's interesting because I think society is almost not society itself, but humans as a society are almost evolved to do that very thing
yes,
for competition and stuff like
Isn't
that.
it
So
a bit of a hypocritical? Like, this it teach in one sense, you teach it's an us versus them mentality entirely, and then you expect people to switch back to the opposite kind of
to
thing. Like,
to collaborative,
yeah, yeah.
which is how we I don't know, what am I allowed to swear in here, Thomas?
Oh,
swear as much as
yeah,
you
yeah,
want.
you can, yeah.
It's how we built damn civilization. The
Did you
whole
just
thing, the whole thing of Ayn Rand, of the rugged individual, of the American psyche, and whatever else you could put into there, of the 20th century or whatever it is. Admittedly, you have to be responsible for your own decisions in life, and you have the one consciousness within your skull, and you're trying to figure things out, and you got your past trauma, and you're dealing with jobs and all these other things, right? But it really bothers me when people go to the length to say that, like, Elon Musk became a billionaire all by his merit. That is factually inaccurate. To become a billionaire like that, there are thousands of decisions you have to make that actively do not give prosperity to other people in some regard. And civilization would not have been built if every single individual in a given society had basically said, screw everyone else, it's all about me. Like, this, human civilizations are built by collective sweat, by groups of people that do certain jobs that they maybe don't want to do, but they need some job to obviously, have a place to live, for food to eat, and to support their family. Um, yeah, for me, that's one of them where I'm trying to be like, hey, like, this whole thing that we have created here took a lot of effort on many people's parts. It wasn't just a few individuals. It wasn't just the iPhone.
we're standing on the shoulders of giants?
Yeah. Like, if you think about it in thought, right? Ironically, like, if you have a working sewer system in your city, in the place you live, that is a huge accomplishment. There are still areas of the world that don't have working sewage systems, and people die regularly because of exposure to those kind of diseases. And that's not something that I think that most of us think about. It comes to thought, we use the bathroom, we do our thing, we go, and it's never an issue. Or
Yeah.
the fact that there are people today who, everyone's got to have some kind of job. The glorified job that many people online, I think, are misled by is just go be an entertainer, a celebrity, and a professional athlete, earn all the money, the fame, what do they call it? Influencer. And go,
Those are
you
only like one in a million people, though. You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Exactly. And yet there are still people today, we still need plumbers. We still need people to go work at the water sewage, treatment plant. One of the most essential jobs that so I am a teacher, and I will tell my students often, I don't tell them what political party I associate with, because I generally don't associate with one.
Teach them how to think as opposed to what to think. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And one of the things I say to them is this: well, here's one policy I do hold. I want every job, like the truck driver in America, in the United States, sorry, to have health insurance. Because for me, it really is about the average worker who is keeping this system going. That I know a lot of people are quick to critique it. They're worried about police reform, education reform, the military industrial complex. They're worried about, Israel and Palestine, Russia and Ukraine, etc. And I fully admit that there are many things the world is going through that we need to address to a certain degree. But at the same time, some practical thing that I could vote on is knowing that with me having my own health insurance, that's great. But if my neighbor doesn't have access to health insurance, or the people who keep this system actually running, the nurses, the truck drivers, the electricians, that's another big one, right? Firefighters. Without those jobs, this whole thing we have, we go back to the Stone Age real quick.
What
Um,
about all our
Problem
food
with the health
providers?
insurance thing isn't the insurance. The problem
Say
with
that again, Peter. I interrupted you.
the problem with that in the US is the price that it's the cost. The cost is way off the charts too high. The profit they're making is ridiculous. That's the problem. It's not the fact you wouldn't need health insurance if it wasn't so fucking off the charts ridiculous in the US.
yeah,
That's
but
the
those
price. I mean, it's like you really have to like get a hold on that and get these fuckers just to tell people we're not going to pay these prices for medicine anymore.
yeah.
Like
That
two
would
hundred. I mean,
mean
I'm not
you
going to
would
pay
need the
two hundred
largest.
fifty
You would
fucking
you
dollars
would
for a cream.
Yeah.
What
Peter.
the?
Peter, you would need the largest grassroots movement of all time to pull that off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like they're lobbyists. Like I mean, they're giving tons of money to fucking
One
politics.
lobbyist can do more damage than 100,000 protesters.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's
Even a
like,
Black Lives Matter fucking riot.
yeah, and
They did a couple of billion, don't they?
I don't remember what it was, but the thought literally of, like, of lobbyists in government, or that, like, people they go to vote for obviously the immediate needs of their family, and then, and their friends, and then potentially their community, right? Which is totally fine. Like, we've done that forever. People only see, again, what's on their horizon line and whatnot. um but I don't think that thinking on the next level up is really that difficult, when you can imagine, like I said, like, you know am I voting, like, just solely for myself? Okay, well, you can do that, but you live in a system, right? We all live in a system that, without the certain stability, we nothing this stops. Like, we saw the toilet paper situation with COVID, and that was, I mean, excuse me, that was a shit show. Right? And
Yeah.
now play that with, places like Venezuela and other places which have had issues with food and prices of, basic necessities and whatnot. But the fact that you get on, like, Thomas, like you said earlier, it's like the basis of thinking, at least I think you did, or maybe Peter did. The
It's okay.
basis of thinking, of trying to establish truth and factual, we need voices that do care about that and want to pursue that. And it's not a thing of, like, claiming, like, I do that and others don't do that. We're all susceptible to personal bias, um, to past, tradition, or past training that we have received, either from our families or the culture or the, society we have lived in, and being able to question those things, so that we can actually think about what, a future would look like.
We have to put a little trust into journalists
Yeah,
because they're doing this job for us right now. There are going to be some that are terrible. There are going to be some that are assholes. There are going to be some that are really good people and getting really good information.
yeah,
It's your journalism is just as broad as, like, how good of a McDonald's that you're going to run across. Is this one better than the one 10 miles down the street kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I don't remember where the hell I was going with that, but
No, it's all good. We're doing, like we said in the beginning, we're doing a free form on thought
yeah,
tonight.
it's a free form.
Yeah,
I like it. I mean, yeah.
there's so many avenues we could go down.
Oh, yeah.
Here, why don't we explore this a little bit? So
Sure.
I'm curious when people talk about like their environment and how environment can affect thought. So, I've noticed this within myself that, as I've gotten older, I'll be 40 next year.
I just turned
Or
38.
That's good.
Yeah.
yeah,
Both
there you
kids.
go. Yeah, young kids.
Peter's
Yeah.
like, what a bunch of babies.
I'm
Yeah, well,
50.
according to my students, I'm a dinosaur. So, there's that.
Oh
Uh
god.
but because I don't have the Riz or whatever, the
So you're
words they
not so
use.
Slayer
No
preppy.
cap. No cap.
Yeah, no cap. But no, the environment that a person grows up in, right? So here's an example. We we are a product of our environment to a certain degree, maybe not wholly, but it does have an effect on us, right?
Yes, they say, well, geneticists will tell you about up to 70% is genetic and the
Okay.
rest environmental.
It really depends on what trait we're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It depends
okay.
on the heritability of
General,
that
yeah,
trait
yeah.
as well,
Mm,
because certain things are more heritable genetic than other things. Like sicknesses may be more genetic than
If
environmental,
our
or like
mindset,
being having a shitty childhood. What's that?
yeah, go ahead, yeah.
I was just saying things like having a shitty childhood would be fully environmental, having nothing to do with your genes.
Could
So
have a larger
I would
impact.
say on a basis, most of the time things are more so genetic. But if you put a child into a bad environment, it doesn't matter how healthy their genes are or how
Yeah.
psychologically and physically healthy they're going to be when they come out. So
Yes,
the
you're absolutely
environment can pretty much ruin the genetics because
mm.
that's at the epigenetic level. That's where our environment is changing our genes, but it just
well.
happens over a longer period of time.
Survival in a particular environment is what's going to kick in.
Mm.
Mm.
Well,
So,
yeah, I mean, these are the selection pressures, right?
absolutely, yeah, you're going to
Yeah.
have to deal
It,
with. If you're in a shitty environment, you're gonna adapt to it to some
Or
degree,
you will die. Yeah,
or you will
that
fucking
is nature.
Thomas, if we were to explore something like, um, I don't want to just use the general, vague term of neurosis, but here, let me explain this for like 30 seconds and then like let us know about your scientific knowledge and your thoughts on this. You have a parent or a guardian who, for much of their life, went through a lot of suffering and not only did they go through suffering, but they grew up in a culture, a different time period where things like therapy and going to get help, from outside resources, was not something that was encouraged. In fact, it was almost on the other side of the spectrum, being taboo.
or never even an option that was
Yeah.
So
considered,
you're talking about my father and his father.
or my fault.
Well, you know what? We all, right? We're all little, comes from somewhere, right?
We're all little child boomers. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. But with the given neurosis, if the parent or guardian, family friend, whoever it is, right, a good friend that you've grown up with, but then you come to realize, I don't know if we should be friends anymore. But they have a thing of neurosis where they, now this is going to go back to the very beginning when you said, about what is real versus what is made up in the mind. Is that like, it was like the first sentence you said? Like,
I can't remember that far back, so don't quote
okay,
me.
that's okay. So
Well,
I'll just, that's
sometimes
cool.
that can actually, that kind of trauma or thing from your parents can actually, if you end up being a happy person, can make you a tougher person as well. So I think there is a balance to be had here.
There is wisdom in suffering. I believe. I don't think that suffering should be completely avoided because it's a part of this human experience and it's going to happen regardless if you like it or not. Even, some people say that pain is necessary but suffering is optional.
I
I don't
think
think
I
suffering
think
is
I
optional.
think
I think.
I
I
think
think suffering is necessary.
there has to be some sort of balance there with suffering. And if you live a life, or if your early life for the first 18 years of your life is suffering free, if you never come across a bad situation, you're definitely not prepared for the fucking world ahead.
Hmm.
That's true.
What's
Yeah.
So
Peter?
you have to be like, you can't, you'll just be as naive as fuck.
I
You
don't know of a human
can't.
alive, Peter, that hasn't suffered. Of the 100 billion people that have lived,
So I
that's
think
true,
there is
by the way.
probably a healthy amount of suffering that we have to go through, and we have to be able to see certain things at play. It may even like correspond to the fact that children are cruel. They say
Well,
things like,
it's not in our nature to be cruel. It's in our nature to be selfish.
yeah.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
mean, my daughter has a mouth. She's only 7, but Jesus Christ, she could fucking, and she can do it like sarcastically as well. But motherfucker, she's as cruel as fuck. Like, but
Start divvying,
it's not meant like.
try an experiment with your kids where you start divvying them out smaller and smaller amounts of food every night, and then eventually they're going to be really, really, really stingy about that piece of
But
food.
my son is just, he's a heart of gold all the time. Like, and even if
Yeah.
he's trying to get out of something, like even when he was tiny, like he created a version. Like,
Hmm.
I don't want to
What
get
is?
Brett too far off the topic, Peter.
okay,
Let's.
carry on,
No,
carry
it's
on.
all good.
Sorry.
What is the? So we're talking about suffering here,
Yeah,
Yep.
right? And then there's one we could argue of, going back to what Travis and other people have talked about on our with our group, like suffering is diminished well-being. Yes?
No. So
No.
suffering is
Okay.
a state, a mental state. We don't even know if there is a neural pattern or a neuronal set of brain waves that associates with suffering. Well, we can't even really pinpoint where pain is. We can, get anecdotal testimony for that, but suffering is completely an idea. So it's very
it
difficult to
could be
point to
worry.
anything in
It
the
could be
body.
an intense worry. It could
Well, I
be,
mean, you can suffer from a lot of things.
you could
So, what was
lose
the
a
original
parent, or
question?
lose like, I mean, like, lose somebody who's close to you. They die. You could have you could lose a fucking limb. There's a lot of ways of looking at this, and
But I
that's the
think Peter, what Thomas is trying to say is those would be physical pains, right, Thomas?
Yeah.
That's not
So
necessarily
well-being
not.
well-being is defined by medical science as anything that is within the mental, like positive mental health psychology,
okay.
and wellness of body, as in completely healthy, functioning organs, all of that kind of stuff. That's going to be your spectrum of well being. I was just explaining as a tangent that suffering can't be pinpointed in the brain or pinpointed anywhere in the body or the nervous system. Suffering is completely a mental state, and I don't know anything other than to describe that it is a complex combination of bad emotions, is what it is.
And so a person could be thinking they're suffering, but one of the challenges with what Peter said a couple of minutes ago, if for someone who's had a very, let's just say, cush life, if that's a word you guys would use, right? They literally have been born into extreme wealth, and like their parents have
You know what
not
that's called? You know what
what
that's
is
called? The member of the Lucky Sperm Club.
mm, is that an official scientific?
But
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, I was gonna say. Carry on, carry on. I lost
you
my.
got you got
They
me
may
there.
have had terrible parents anyway,
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter. Go
yeah. But
ahead.
like the suffering is assumed by the individual. We'll use Peter's case where the person is like, they, let's say they get out into the real world, whether it's into the college working world or just adult world in general, And let's just take it with jobs easily, right? They go to apply for a job that their parent can't just give them. And when they go to apply for the job, they don't get the job because there was 10 other applicants and 9 of them were better than the one person because they didn't have any experience or whatever else it is, right?
Right.
So the one person is assuming suffering because they're like, I didn't get the job, this is so terrible, etc. But to Peter's point, like, to the individual who's not on that side of the spectrum and who's towards the middle or the other side of the spectrum of suffering, they would be like, no, that's reality, man. You know, most people don't get they might get their first job, might get handed to them by their parents, like a business the parent runs or whatever else it is. When you get in the real world, like, there is a very big statistical chance that you're not going to get the first job you apply to. And so the perception of thought is kind of whack because, like, Peter, do you want to dive into that mentality, like why that?
I was just thinking about the concept of sport and the idea of loss when you lose a competition.
Mm,
A lot of kids, a lot of people avoid anything they'll lose at
mm-hmm,
because they don't like to lose, so they
mm-hmm.
won't play. And I think,
I
in a
think we
certain
know
sense,
people like that, don't we?
I think it's important that we I think that's I think games where you can lose or win are important as a kid. Like, that gives you a sense of that the world isn't fair, or
Which is
it's not that it's fair or not fair. It's just that if you're better at something, the chances of you succeeding at something are greater, and that takes work. It and that takes doing
You could
hard
give a
work.
kid every possible advantage. It's a possibility. I'm saying that you could
Yeah,
give a kid every advantage that they could possibly have, a wonderful upbringing, wonderful parents, all that kind of stuff, and then they turn into a heroin addict when they're 19.
yeah.
mm-hmm.
Or, but about I think the idea. I think everybody should try and get good at something,
I
and that
agree.
takes work,
I
and that
agree
takes
too. Have a passion. I
Gotta
don't
have at least.
like
I think
don't be
we all need at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 passions.
yeah
and we need
don't
to
be
fail constantly at them and go again, get up, go again.
yeah don't be torturing little puppies and trying to get better at it, but
No,
have
please don't.
have have some kind of passion, whether it's music, instruments, sports. You don't have to do athletics. Some people, they come to realize, like, I just athletics don't make sense to me in my regard.
Yeah.
I've tried to play instruments and I've only ever been mediocre just because I don't think
Well, I mean,
did.
that's because you probably didn't practice the fuck out of it. Like,
I didn't. You're right. I did
you,
not, and I regret it to this day. But
Peter,
yeah, like,
for the audience, Peter is a very, very good musician.
yeah.
Knows his shit inside and out. Very good.
well, I
And
still have a lot to learn. If you ask me, I'm going. I know fucking
and I
nothing.
don't want to go down it right now. I want to continue with this because I have an idea where we could go with this. But
Go.
the fact that scientific articles talk about the fact that music makes you think differently and can really help a person, like playing instruments just makes your brain, or listening to music as well, like reading through and creating your own stuff, makes your brain move differently in the same way of writing, reading, or exploring a topic to a deep level.
Have you ever heard of left right brain hemisphere synchronization?
Yep.
Oh, fucking
Yeah.
synesthesia.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
synesthesia.
Yeah.
but I think that it's really, I think you, like, back to Peter's point, like, I think it's really essential that, you know, you can come to realize, you say, well, what is the perfect amount of thinking or a thinking level for a person of a given different age? And I think we could all agree that there is no perfect level because, you could talk about like maturity level and stuff like that, but people have different living experiences as they grow up. Maybe the call is for them to be able to develop, Thomas, the critical thinking skills to understand that different things can occur. And to Peter's point, like, yeah, if you haven't like failed at a job yet, like, you potentially will, and you should prepare for how that could happen. I don't know. I know I merged a couple
It's
topics.
okay. By the way, it's okay to fail, everybody.
Yes,
It's all right
yes,
to
it
fail.
is.
It's not
It
okay
is.
to fail so bad that you are like costing people their jobs or their lives. But as long as you fail within the scope of your own what you're trying and what you're doing, that's okay. You can learn and get better and overcome.
Peter, how do you? I'm curious, real quick, if you want, maybe like a minute or two. How do you talk to your kids about failure or something along the lines of failure?
My son has a bit of a problem with failure. He's getting better. He's very meticulous. He's a very high IQ, I think, and he's mathematic and but I think he
To get
might
mad at Forza,
little bit of he's on force. He was asking you, Thomas. He was asking me the other day, so I think Thomas is
he
coming.
needs to get on Forza Five or Forza Motorsport and play with me. I'll
Oh, he
play with
is.
him.
Yeah, he could do. Yeah, he definitely could do
He
that.
can
Yeah.
play with me. He get. Ooh, I whoop him though. I whoop him
That-
good. He just better be ready. No, I'm kidding. He's probably great.
We'll see. We'll see.
Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
Anyway,
I'm sorry.
sorry,
I
sorry,
interrupted.
question there. Brief again. How do I talk to my kids about critical thinking? Well, I mean, they're only 7 and 8. Okay.
yeah,
Now,
admit.
I am willing to let. I mean, I think my son was explaining something to me. It was a theory or some sort of an idea he had about something, and it was completely, fantasy. And I let it go. I decided, okay, he's 8 years old. He was talking about a foot. It was a football that was in the grandparents' house, like in the west of Ireland. That was there last week, and it was like a cheap fucking rubber football. Like, I mean, he was talking, and these things are. He was talking about they're illegal in the World Cup. You can't actually play with them because they do crazy things when you kick them, like. And I just said, I'm just gonna let this lie because I mean, eventually he's gonna figure it out. I'm gonna let him make the mistakes he's gonna make to a degree, unless it's a big logical fallacy. I'll pull him up on it. But I'm gonna let him have that little bit of childish fantasy to a degree until a certain point.
And within the childlike mindset or experience of life, however, what the ever the age would be till 14, 18, or
Yeah.
however it would be, for medical terms, there's like a lot of artists and people I've talked to have mentioned this thing about thinking and artistic creativity and whatever else it is like there's that exploration period where they're really trying to understand the world and they're looking at different topics, and like you said, they might come to believe things that are 100% factually accurate, and then other things that
When it
that
comes to art, you don't need facts to a degree. But you need to be good at what you do. So the facts of the discipline of what you're in, whether it be music or poetry or whatever, use of language or notation and harmony and stuff like that, or rhythm. You, you have to have your basics down. You have to have your foundation down.
Yeah, no
But
doubt. I think Brett was talking a little bit more like analytically. Is that what you were getting at, Brett? Or were you talking
um
about creatively?
he
either
talks
either
about
either one's
creativity.
fine.
Oh,
But as far as creativity goes, um,
well, I just think Brett had a point. I think I don't know if we let him finish or not.
yeah, sorry, I think
No,
he was
it's
asking
okay.
a
It's all
question.
it's all good, dude. We're having a good
Yeah,
informal
we're having a good time. I just
dialogue.
wanted to make sure Brett got it all out there.
Yeah,
Like
but he
it's,
did. He
It's
asked you
his show tonight.
creativity,
so
so
all right, let me see if I can paint a couple of the contrasts we have here. So there definitely is the thing, like you need the technical knowledge to play a good, instrument, right? But you might argue that at least I have with my writing, where the real great playing of a musician gets to where they get into the flow state and it's almost like they're not even thinking. They're just playing the instrument, or if you're engaging in a topic that you've gone over, several times, you're barely thinking about the thoughts because you feel so, engaged with the topic that you know.
connected. Yes,
Yeah.
there are just two factors to that. For a
Okay.
start, there's the technical aspect of what you're doing. So the technical work has to be done.
Hmm.
Uh, Secondly, you cannot be, let's say, anxious or
Mm.
worried.
You
And
can't
when I
be
mean
afraid to
by
fail.
that, but if you got a lot of the work done, sometimes you can override that little bit of nervousness. That
Hmm.
actually, I mean, doesn't matter how much practice you do if you're shitting your fucking self when you're playing in front of.
If you're in the flow state, anxiety kind of takes a side seat, doesn't it?
Um, it's like I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm the king. Like,
Well, no, but you know why I don't give a fuck is somewhat of a powerful statement, and maybe you don't want your 7-year-old saying that, or maybe in Ireland that's like their second language. But whatever it is, no, I'm just giving you a hard time. But like, but
they-
but
I,
you know why it's such a you know why it's such a beautiful statement? Because when you realize that part of our mental processes and thought can be paralyzing, this is my friend Jiddu
yes,
Krishnamurti.
yeah.
I don't think we're going to read his excerpt tonight, but this is a
I
guy that I've
am. I'm a perfect example of that. I've done gigs where I was literally physically paralyzed because of nerves,
exactly.
and that fear comes from my, let's say, expectations of myself and how I am thought of. The more I think about the other people's opinion on me when I'm playing music, the less well I'll play,
That's it. That's
because
that's
I
not the
want
whole
I
thing.
want
Part of
them to
it.
think
Yeah.
I'm good. If that's where it's coming from, then you will not play well. You will actually play slower. Your reflexes will be slower. Your focus isn't on what you should be focusing on. It's on yourself, so you're not actually thinking about what you should be thinking of.
And
And
you
it just has a complete counter, let's say, productive, you know.
yeah, and then the question might be, let's not go into analysis to the point of paralysis. Again, the guy I was mentioning before, Krishnamurti, who I study a lot of, he says that phrase in a lot of his books and talks. Don't go to the point of analysis to where you're paralysis you're literal you have literal paralysis because you are
The
overthinking, and it's
statement is paralysis by analysis,
You're
or
overwhelmed with the
analysis
situation as
paralysis.
well. A lot of people, I've seen that
Yeah.
happen.
but
It happens to me.
it's like you said, you get into, because I'll notice this every now and again when I'm teaching in front of 25 18-year-olds. Is the thing I'm saying true? Are my arguments making sense? How's my tone? Do I have something hanging from my nose? Whatever else it is that I'm thinking about while I'm up there doing public speaking every day. But you make such a great point, Peter. It's like we're afraid of failure, we're afraid of the judgment, we're afraid of other people, their perceptions of us to a certain degree, either for our idea of quote unquote prestige or whatever else it is. There's so many little factors that we're concerned about. For you as a musician, you want to put on a damn good
And
show.
here's the thing: when you don't give a fuck about how you're coming across, you actually come across 10 times better.
Hmm.
You actually do come
D-
across so much better when you don't care about how you come across.
well, but is that okay? I just want to devil's advocate a little to push back just slightly. But that's also determinant of the environment and the type of thing that is at stake.
Well, that's up to you to gauge, really. I mean, you're not gonna when you're in Rome, do as the Germans did, you know. So
Hmm.
if I'm in a different musical situation, for instance, I'm not gonna do the same thing I did in the last gig.
Yeah,
I'd be much more sensitive, or yes, you have to adapt to different situations, of course.
yeah,
But
and
it has
you,
the same skill set.
yeah, and it's you don't. Well, you don't. Okay, not to bring in Taoism, but you don't want the extreme on either side, right? I wish Dao was here because he could talk.
If that it takes experience as well, I think. I mean, you need to kind of fuck up every now and then to realize, okay, that wasn't what I should have been doing in that situation. And if you do it enough, But if you're not used to a particular situation and you're doing what you're doing in, then sometimes it can work offhand, and then sometimes it's like, okay, I need to review the way I look at this particular aspect of what I'm
And
doing. Do you know what I mean? Like if I put it to music terms, like it's like, okay, I listen back or I look back at what I was doing and say, okay, I need to that work did that way worked in this situation, but it's not going to work in other situations. It's part of the same. Like, I mean, use a teacher would be. It's the same thing. It's like it's basically becoming versatile. Or if you were looking at in music terms, being a virtuoso of different
mm,
you know situations. Like, you're still the same person, but you have to. You basically just it's just adaptation to different
and
situations.
but I think you alluded to something there that was really important, and this will make sense with the my reference to Taoism. It's like there's the I don't give a f all the time, whatever, which could be detrimental. And then there's the other side where too much discipline, too much, rules are never meant to be broken kind of thing. And like, where is the healthy medium that you find which can allow you to both feel the feeling and the power of not giving a fuck, but also then like when you need to go back to the drawing board, if you realize that like there's a certain riff, is riff the right word, like your
Yeah, well, let's say there's a passage or something like that. Yeah,
yeah,
could
and
be.
and that one turn from one chord to the next is, you feel kind of challenged with it, so how can you like approach it um differently? But yeah, I think that but again, to Thomas's point earlier, the fundamental thing of saying like failure is not, can you digest the thought that failure sometimes could be detrimental for you because you're in some kind of situation, if you needed a job and you didn't get one,
I, I, I
but
I think that some failure to some people makes them actually give up. Uh,
because they take it personal, or
I don't know. I think because they take it emotional, or
mm,
the emotional hit is so much that they lose faith in themselves, or they lose confidence in themselves. I
mm,
think I think majority of people lose confidence in their own abilities when they have abilities that can be developed, and they just think, oh, I'm just not good at this, I'm never going to be good at this, and they just forget it because they don't want to go through that again.
or what about back to the environmental factor where, we were talking a little bit about parents and guardians and such, and
Yeah.
if you live in a household where failure is regularly named as like the boogeyman. It literally is like the worst thing you could do. And the fact that you're sitting there and being like, dude, we are human beings and I just want you to breathe real quick. And you have a parental or guardian or, maybe a grandparent. Like I've had students before who have admitted that like their parents are okay, but their grandparents have crazy expectations of them. Like,
Sounds like the parents of someone myself and Thomas were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
um
yeah. Dude, there's a joke on Family Guy, guys, where where a Korean dad or a Japanese dad walks in on his son. He's like, "Are you doctor yet?" He goes, "No, I'm 5." Okay, talk to me when you doctor.
and it's like you see that, the parent is coming from a place of like, there's like the prestige aspect, which you're like, okay, is there any validity to that? Then there's also the real concern about financial security. But the fact that, parents around the world, at times there isn't kind of like, it doesn't seem that there's always like a universal thing of like, hey, like, that failure is okay because you've failed at your life, and yet somehow you don't translate that to like how you're interacting with your kid. And so then they, as they grow up, become very adverse to failure.
Okay. I'll
Is that, you see where I'm going with that?
I'm going to use myself as an example.
Sure.
I have always had a shit ton of confidence in myself with whatever I've ever done, and no amount of fucking external factor could change that. And I've had a few hard knocks, and I think that's very much benefited me as a musician and a person as well. And
Because
I think that's I think and it may be just my personality type that I just don't. If somebody says I can't do something, fuck me. You've just sent me on the. I'm just going. I'm coming for you, like, you know. So,
Peter, you can't jump to the moon.
well, I'm gonna fucking start training.
give him time to get a Superman costume, Iron Man.
But I mean,
Maybe
yes,
that's
within reason,
maybe
yeah.
Elon's gonna sell that. Hey guys, you can jump to the moon to the next planet with this suit.
I'll have to eat my words then.
But my particular instrument is a strangely like tuned instrument.
Does it make you
It's
levitate?
awkward. It's a bit, when I said I was going to study jazz and play jazz on it, people were saying, "You're not going to be able to play jazz on that. You can't do it."
And then you did it.
But you
And then I
can.
did it. So
Mm.
then it was like, "Oh, he did it." So
It's like,
that's really that the critics become crickets.
there is a quote. There is a quote. I don't remember what it is. And someone, if anyone's watching the audience and wants to go look it up, or we could look it up later. But it's literally like the person who says it's impossible should not stand in the way of the person who is doing the impossible, or something like that.
Or thinks they can achieve the impossible. Yes, absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, go for it. I mean, go as far as you can.
yeah. I you're talking about personal, just stories and how that has affected you. I literally owe my life to a failure about 8.5 years ago, where I was trying to go for a certain teaching job, and I didn't. And I ended up getting passed over for it and told that I was not going to be offered the job, and so I had to move to another part of California because I was seeking a full time employment, and now 8.5 years later, I owe I got married a couple weeks ago, so that was really cool. I owe my marriage and all of the great things in my life now to a failure many years ago, which at the time was very frustrating, but like it came circle. And I'm not saying that always happens, because we shouldn't, make generalizations like that. But at the time, man, if you had told me like, oh, 8 years from now, this is going to be a good thing, I would have been like,
Did you battle back against that failure and say, I'm gonna fucking nail this shit"?
yeah.
Yeah.
And just the fact that when failure occurs, if we're going to go into really deep, I don't know if you want to call it critical thinking, but just slowing down thought enough to say, what are the reasons that fear of failure, like what does it do to you? Why does it concern you? How does it affect you? Is the word, Thomas, physiologically? Is that what
Yes,
nerves?
physiologically.
You
Okay.
see, I mean, even with my self confidence in myself, I suffered hugely with stage fright,
Mm,
and I did a live TV thing. What was it, like 4 or 5 years ago? And somebody kind of threw me on the spot. Says, "There's a free spot going here. We need somebody to play." Somebody's backed out. It was live, went on, and it was okay. It was just I didn't play well. I didn't feel well. I fucking, as soon as those lights came on, I fucking shat myself. And we played the piece way too fast, so it was like a fucking, yeah. Got through it anyway. After that, I started meditating. I said,
mm,
"Fuck this! I can't do this anymore. I
hmm.
need to get my head in order."
And when you say meditating, let's help like anyone who's watching this, so that like, well, let's break a stigma, if you will.
Okay.
You're not doing the like hardcore Buddhist meditation with different practices or whatever else it might be, or in
No,
Hinduism.
I actually use Sam Harris's mindfulness meditation, waking up.
Yeah.
practical, no bullshit, no reincarnation involved or any kind of belief system. Just
Mm.
basically, rest the mind, just and become
Hmm.
aware of your actions and become aware of yourself. Just be
Yeah,
aware of what your mind's doing.
which is hard to do at times because
Oh, of course,
you
yeah.
am I in control of it, and also like the whole thing, because we could go again, we could go down free will with that,
Initially, what
but
what I realized after a couple of weeks was how hard it was to do that, and how
mm,
much crap was constantly being churned out from my mind. My mind was just
I
constantly.
know this sounds ridiculous, but I think about that shit from morning till night.
mm, and where the origin of it is, and also
It's a habit.
why
It's
does the one thought, like, especially if we want to keep it on, something as straightforward as failure, like, that most of the failures, as I think I hope I somewhat established that a little bit ago, but it's like, most of the failures are not going to ruin your life. You know that if you can really sit down and be honest with yourself, like if you don't have a job and you fail to get the one job, okay, that could be an example of where you're like, I really need this job, I need to pay rent, etc. I need to find my path forward. Um, but in other regards, one day I had a lesson I had planned for in school, which I thought was going to be really good, and it ended up being terrible because the students did not see it like I did, and I regarded it as a huge failure. But from that failure, the slowing down, like you're saying, Peter, I developed a project that actually became one of the most popular projects I do the entire school year, because I had to rethink, like a student, how do I engage them? How do I engage their thoughts? How do I make it original to them so it actually means something to
I'd
them and to
say
their
dealing
life?
with teenagers is really fucking difficult. I'd say it's an art in
Yeah,
itself.
it can be. It
I,
can
I
be.
mean, yeah, it can be. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I deal
You
with late teens, and when they get to university, like I do some teaching there. So
yeah. You know what? I want to say this real quick, since you just brought it up. I have worked with teenagers now for over a decade. Um, I think, number one, they can be, like you said, they can be little shites. But I know you didn't say that word, but I like want to throw in that my terrible accent there. But
oh,
but
yeah, we all remember what we were like when
yeah,
we were
but
teenagers.
but you know what? So can I be. So can I be as an adult. And you would be shocked at the number of times when it doesn't matter what sex, what race, where the person comes from. You'd be shocked how many times, if I treat a student, if I give them love, I give them compassion, I do hold them accountable for boundaries, because, like we said about the whole, kids being, having to be socialized earlier, like in preschool and stuff like that. And your kids now, I'm sure you're noticing some of that with their schools. You still have to do that in high school to a certain degree to make sure everybody's on the same page. But if you treat them with humanity, you'd be shocked at how many problems go away. Like,
I
it's
think
just, it's
if
incredible.
you treat them like adults, as
There
equals,
you go.
if you treat them like
Yeah.
equals, they will respect you because that's all they want. Because they've been treated like fucking kids for their entire lives. It's like you come here, we got something to talk about, you
Yeah.
know. And here's
It's,
and treat them the same way. You're an equal person. I don't care what age you are. Your
and
brain won't be developed for another 10 years, but let's get somewhere along the line. And yeah, I know what you mean.
let's find a productive line. Thomas, were you going to say something? Sorry.
No, I'm
No, you're
listening.
not. Okay.
Thomas say something.
So this here would be a lesson that I would want to do. I could do a whole, like, show on this with anybody that wanted to talk about it. But did you all see Gladiator with Russell
Yep,
Crowe?
yep.
Okay. So some people say, oh, I've never seen it. I'm like, oh boy, tomorrow. Get strapped in. Are you not entertained? So to me, that movie is a perfect example of the different forms of leadership. And if you use thought with Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics or whatever else it might be. But, Maximus was the leader who didn't say, I'm the leader, look at me, you must follow me. He was the leader who went into the damn trenches and literally almost died with his troops, right? Whereas Commodus came from wealth. This is the thing you might maybe sort of similar to what you were talking about earlier, Peter. Commodus came from wealth. He came in after the war. He had not done the actual fighting, but he knew that because of the laws, he was going to be the one that was going to be emperor just because his father was, until his father obviously said, you won't be, and I won't ruin any more of it if you haven't seen it.
I've seen it, yeah, but he kills him then, right?
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. But
Look, I mean, we've all seen the movie. It's 50 years old.
spoiler for Gladiator. No, it's an amazing movie, and the soundtrack to me is phenomenal. Hans
Darth
Zimmer
Vader kills Luke.
Hans Zimmer is a genius. I just want to throw
Hans
that out there.
Zimmer. Okay, I met him once actually.
Did you really?
Yeah, yeah. He was a friend of mine. He has his own band, and some of the musicians in his band are Hans Zimmer. So they came. Hans Zimmer came to see me play
Mm.
back like what, fucking 20 years ago. Or something.
Well, that movie to me illustrates the point. You know, what was it that made Maximus and Commodus come to be two different human beings who had leadership roles or potential leadership roles? One of them, though, took it, I would say, quote unquote, the right way, Maximus, because he realized that his troops were just as important to the battle as it was of him being the general, versus Commodus, who basically said, like, hey, look at me, I'm important, like, you need to follow what I say, or I'm going to kill you. Like, literally, I'll have you killed if you, do something that I don't like. And you realize that some of it's environment, some of it is, the different ways they potentially grew up and, the factors that go outside of it. But then there's also the thought where you could see that, when Maximus was on his course and whatnot, and was of very focused thinking, like, yes, he was probably just a better fighter, so that's probably why he had some of the confidence, but he, he didn't need to think about, I don't know how to put it, but basically, he didn't need to think about being a leader. He just was. And part of that is because when you go to observe, human interactions, for example, when I'm coaching sports, like I've done several with different sports over the years, the best teams that came together were the ones that realized that even though some people were going to be better athletes than if they're playing a team sport, they need to win as a team.
It's the same as a band. A good band isn't necessarily made up of the best musicians you can find. A good band is the band that can communicate as a band.
And the thoughts that can be counterproductive. And Thomas, I don't know if you want to jump in about thoughts that you think people can have that are counterproductive or
Right back.
different,
Yes.
the science on it, but like the thoughts that are counterproductive, can I identify them within myself as they're coming up, especially if it's something like, I haven't slept really well in 2 days, so I actually have to change my routines and go to bed earlier. But I don't know. What do you think about
This
the?
takes metacognition. You have to think about your own thoughts and
Mm,
how your emotions tie into your thoughts, that they happen at the same time. There's really no separation. But
mm,
thinking about your thoughts, that's going to lead you down the path of a little bit of insanity, because it gets old thinking. Well, it doesn't get old. It gets tiring, right?
mm.
Always thinking about what you're thinking about. But honestly, I think if people would let that little bit of torture in, they would experience a whole new reality of looking at reality. I don't know how to say it right. A whole, like, clarity.
And maybe, what do you think of this analogy? You're going from here to
Yeah, the
here.
scope widens. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and when the scope widens, like you have done, you realize the beauty in all different forms of music. Maybe there are some genres you don't like that you haven't told
There
me
are a
about.
few. Yes.
But you're part of why the passion you love it, right? Is just the crazy amazingness of so many different forms.
Yep.
That's
Yep,
how I
that's,
feel
that's the
about
beauty
reading
of it.
and authors. Sorry, I cut you off. My bad.
No. I was just saying that I get it about the authors too. That's the beauty of music. That's the beauty of all normative forms of creativity: music, poetry, film, pictures, media, any media. Uh, critical thinking can help with your creativity as well. Just like if you were to do a painting, well, I want it to be all feeling. Well, think about your emotions as you're painting it. You know,
Yeah.
you can really go down a multiple like rabbit holes of the thinking paradox. I'm thinking about thinking about thinking about thinking.
And
You can get
if you
crazy about
have
it if you're obsessive like I am.
basic form, I can only so my one of my hobbies that I've told you about is writing, and I have a typewriter, so I do cursive handwriting, and I also do work on my typewriter. But
Cursive
when I really,
sucks.
it's hard to read, but it's
Sucks.
I love. There's something very therapeutic to me about writing words out and just doing all the
The
curves and
king's
stuff. But
language.
yeah, as I
Yeah.
am. Oh yes, I'm a very elitist. Yeah, that's my team.
Oh.
The Queen
Uh,
Bee.
yeah, I write with my pinky up, just like a teacup. But that was stupid. But no, I just when I'm on the typewriter and you get in that space where you just like Peter said, it's almost like you stop giving a fuck, or you just stop saying what the piece has to be. So you get the title like sunset over the Maldives, and you don't tell yourself what it has to be written about, because there's been 1,001 poems about sunsets, but you go in there to the unlimited, if you will, the widened spectrum, and you just start talking about it. Because even if my first draft of a poem about a sunset over the Maldives is crap, guess what? No one else is going to see it. Like, and I can go,
At least, at
edit
least
it and get better.
writing, you can go back and edit it,
Yeah,
and with a musical performance, it is what it
true.
is. It's you're fucking you're
I
there.
think I think musical performance should almost be considered a sport, honestly.
It's a mental sport, but the competition is with
Yeah,
yourself. How much
yeah,
control have you got over yourself?
yeah,
And I think
exactly.
that's it. And when you are in that really comfortable position, and if you're
Do
well
you
trained enough, you sometimes you feel you cannot fuck up. And
did
when you get into that situation where I cannot fuck up, like then you're just then you're in the flow state,
Yeah,
properly the flow
yep.
state.
Then it's playing itself.
Like I said,
either
but
of you
that's the way the Indians talk about music. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you practice and you practice and practice until it plays itself.
Did either of you, speaking of live performances, ever see the video with Kiss Guy with Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters? Have you seen that video?
No,
No? Oh my god. All right. So I'm going to put it in the chat, our group
nope.
chat. I'm pretty sure this looks familiar. So this guy, dude, you should watch it. I think it's worth it. This guy, his name is Yayo Sanchez. He's from Texas. So Foo Fighters was doing a concert in Texas. I don't know what you all think of Foo Fighters, but the video came up, and yeah, I grew up with Foo Fighters as one of the whatever bands. What genre would you consider them?
I don't even
They
know.
are grunge rock, alternative rock.
Okay,
I haven't really listened to them much at all. I'm sure I've heard some.
Everything
I,
from their
I,
'97
I,
album,
I
everything
think
from their '97 album that had their big hits. Everlong, My Hero, all that kind of stuff.
right.
I've definitely played some of their stuff with some singers and
Yeah,
everything. So
they
uh,
still make albums. They've got like 20 something albums, but
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody really listens to them as much as I'm sure they have a huge following still.
yeah,
Loyal fan base, but
yeah,
uh, their records aren't making any waves, at least within the places that I go.
yeah. As they might have been before, with the more like,
In the '90s, they were obviously making waves because in the
yeah.
'90s music was different. You still had like CDs and shit, so there was like
Well,
big money.
yeah,
Yeah,
this was about this was in 2018, So basically, they're playing a concert and they go to play Monkey Wrench, one of their more popular songs. And Yayo has long black hair. He has Kiss makeup on. He has like a rocket, like ACDC, like cut off sleeves. Like he looks like he's ready to jam. And he has a poster in the audience that says, "Can I play Monkey Wrench with you guys?" or something like that. And so Dave brings him up and says, like, you better not suck. And so he's like hanging out with him for a minute, and then they go to play, and he just kills it. Like it we're most people are convinced it wasn't staged, and Dave said it was like, no, this was not staged. This was the most random thing ever. That he's ever one of the most random things he's ever done. But Yayo went to play. They played the whole song together. They had breaks. He had a couple of solos that he did. He's obviously played a few times in his life, but it was just so knowing the little I do about music and how long it takes musicians to get the songs down and to be playing with another, but then they have some creativity. They go around the stage, and they kind of move a little bit. They, whatever they do to make
Well,
the
that's
songs.
the entertainment industry. That's a
Yeah,
different.
but Yayo just killed it, and it was just so cool because I was sitting there thinking to myself like, here's a guy who literally like he had that dream like, will one of my favorite bands let me come on stage and play with them, and can I destroy, like, can I bring the house down? And it was just, yeah, it's so cool. I
Did he
put it.
play guitar? Or did he get along with an instrument or something? Or what did he
He
do?
played guitar. He played Dave's guitar, and he
Oh,
destroyed.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
it was really
It,
really good.
yeah, I don't know. It's a strange thing. I mean, most if you're doing a gig, like I mean, a rule would never to be let anyone fucking up.
Yeah, yeah, because
Unless you just got a feeling off, or I don't know. It's not something you would do as a band, as a professional musician. You would never ever trust anybody. I mean, you got Dunning Kruger effect like all over the place, like
yeah. What,
so.
what were we gonna say, Thomas?
I was just gonna say, uh, it's not hard to learn the like that guy playing on stage. It's not hard to learn Foo Fighters. It's like three power chords on most of their songs. They have some good songs for sure, but but it's not like a miracle that guy played those guitar parts because you could pick like Scott Carstairs from Fallujah and get him up on that stage, and everybody would like just shit their pants from how good he is.
Let me check out Foo Fighters.
Yeah, I put it. I don't know if it's so. We've only used this chat a couple times before, so I put it in the private chat, but it was to the group, so you guys might be able to see it on the side. And then I think I put it in the YouTube chat. But um, yeah, I don't know. We've come a long way with the different topics we've been talking about with thought,
Yep.
but I really appreciate the fact, like I think we were mentioning that the slowing down, um, and recognizing your thoughts like as they come up and
Takes time to get used to that.
getting used to it and when you go to investigate why the thoughts come up to just the encouragement. I would hope, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but sitting with yourself in non-judgment,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah, that's a
we're
big factor.
we're prone to judge ourselves, right? And we're prone to more thinking is going to get me out of this, and it's like, okay, but silence is also a very beautiful place where thought can just cease for a second, and then, like you said earlier, Thomas, like your scope could easily widen because the noise has calmed down for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
even if only for a second.
You can
Like,
widen that noise around you. The more you think about your thoughts and emotions, the more you understand other people, and so the circle of like static gets further and further away from you. It's pretty cool, just metaphorically speaking.
yeah,
But
and if it whether it's the meditation Peter was talking about, or it's just, for me, it's nature. I think I've mentioned it on a few shows with you guys.
nature's a big part of it. Yeah. A really big part is that you find your way to meditate, whether it's through music, whether it's through sitting and breathing, whether it's through going out into nature and staring up at the sun, whatever you find is going to trance you out in some way, give you a feeling of the touch of that flow state that everybody wants to be in so bad.
Hmm.
Um, you
Yeah,
can find those people.
I find it really helpful. And here was a revelation I had. So a little more personal stuff. We we came to recognize that in our family, certain medical things were occurring, and one medical thing came up um, where I realized that this was something we're going to have to face, right? Both as a family and with the individual who has it. But what I came to realize is that if you have no control over the situation with something like a terminal disease that is incurable, or Alzheimer's, or Lou Gehrig's disease, or something that a person can get in old age or even young age as well. But the first thought is, this is terrible, this sucks, this is horrible. Why me? Why this person I care about? Whoever else it might be. Um, that might be the first thought that a person has. But in the quiet of just slowing things down, when I came to the realization that it's not ideal, this is really a shitty situation to be in, but that the best time I was going to have with another person would be right now, because down the road, with many of these diseases, they just get worse and worse. It really brought in like you know, it was almost like a gift I received, where it was like, you can be upset about this, you can walk through it, you're going to have the emotions. Some days they're going to be overpowering, and you just have to like pull back for a minute and come back to here. But also, this is why so many people of wisdom and philosophy and history have said, like, the moment is now. It really is to go, spend it with them, because this every moment is a gift. I know that sounds really poetic and really, you know, goofy, but
If it mean if if being cool means being what's the saying? If being cheesy is what it means to love people, then I'll be cheesy. It's something like that. I can't remember, but yeah, be as cheesy as you want to.
I was going to say about you were talking about meditation. After a few weeks of meditation, I remember lying on the sofa over there, and I was just kind of saying, like, okay, I'm going to feel as much as I can. And I was never one that thought I was stressed at all. But when I actually let myself go emotionally, just let it go and feel, and I could, Jesus, the amount of stress that I actually did feel. And I was going, okay, I'm going to feel this as much as I can. So when I focused my attention on the stress that that was kind of just probably just pent up stress from decades long, like, and the more I went through that kind of thing of just focusing on that negative feeling that was coming out of me, the less impact it had on me. And in order to overcome it, I had to go through it. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm trying to explain it as best as I can.
is it
It's okay.
is it the is it the idea of the
I
subconscious?
sat and I relaxed and I just let myself kind of go. So, but I was able to go deeper than I had been before. Just with being relaxed and just, what am I experiencing physically and mentally here? I could feel my whole chest just going, oh my God, this is like, there is a lot of fucking pent up tension here that I wasn't aware of.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'm
I
familiar.
just I felt it as much as I could. Actually, I embraced the negative feeling of it, and after a while, it just dissipated. Does that
Yes,
resonate with anybody or anything?
Yes, I mean that's
absolutely.
happened to me in meditation as well. It's a lot harder for me to meditate on my medication, but I can still do it.
Yeah, I think it's not something that you do through meditation, but the meditation led to me doing that.
Yes.
It's not something you do when you're meditating. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean you
It,
can. You can
it
do a
opened
lot of things while
it
you're
opened the
meditating. You
door for
can
me to go down
change
that
what.
route.
I'm sorry.
It opened the door for me to do that.
So the meditation allowed you to release the stress, and then
Yes,
concurrently you did the other thing. Gotcha.
I completely relate to that. What I call it is letting ideas come to the dinner table. So I imagine a dinner table
this
where
wasn't even an
all
idea thing. This is just a feeling. Just it was pure feeling. There was no actual dialogue or there was no source. There was no people involved. No external anything. It was just the physical feeling itself.
gotcha. Well, I don't actually like say it out loud to myself, but I do, I guess, think it to a certain regard. Um, but it's like I more of imagining a setting where thoughts that are coming up come to full consciousness, and sometimes the first hesitation is to resist against them and be like, no, that's not who I am, that's not, that's a past thing, whatever, and to be, put up a lot of defenses. But noticing that maybe not with all of them, because sometimes you can push a given thought away depending on how strong it is, but with others, when I let them come up to the what I call the dinner table, that's exactly what happened. Is they I would sit with them a little bit. I would give it a second to kind of just work on the breath, just focusing on the breath and
I can
such.
see that too. Yeah, yeah.
And there would be more intense periods than others, but so many of them, it's almost like a ghost that wants to be heard, right? And it's like it's a taunting memory about, oh, remember this time you
Sometimes the
failed,
ghost
like,
that doesn't want to be heard.
yeah,
That's the reality of it. But I think the particular memories themselves aren't the problem. They're the trigger.
yeah.
It's it's the tension that they create in your mindset and in your body that has to be probably addressed. But the actual thought, I don't think has as much variety. If you go back to the thought, then you're at square one again.
But
You're not.
the thought,
It's like a doctor treating the symptoms as opposed to treating the either the outcome or the fucking the
Treating the disease.
yeah.
it's you're back to fueling the disease. It's like
Hmm.
But the
opposed
thought,
to okay. The analogy isn't perfect there,
Yeah,
but
it's
you
not
know,
perfect, but it's okay.
medicine treats the symptoms, but you can probably flip
It
that.
works well enough. We'll take it.
Okay,
and
okay,
the
flip it,
thought
flip it.
the thought can lead to, even though the thought is just the thought itself, the thought can lead to a potential spiral where more thoughts come in, you can't stop thinking, and then you maybe in some way, either literally because of outside sources that you need to be concerned about for your personal safety, but then also the ones within where they spiral and they almost take on so much more strength because you assume that reality to be the only reality, or like you assume those thoughts to be like, they're like, oh my god, that's so true, I am such a failure, or whatever else, and then
Okay, I think
it
when
can
we
spiral.
fuck up, when we actually fuck up badly as people in a social situation, when we do something stupid, then maybe it's justified that we do go through some of that, forming a guilt mechanism, temporarily,
Mm.
because then we're going to try and, we might message somebody, or we'll actually, or drop into a place that you're a dickhead and just apologize.
Yeah.
And
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 then
and, and when you do that, like, people, regardless of, you'll feel better about yourself, and generally, if you're apologizing to the right people that you fucked over, like, if you're a drunk as a dickhead is, full of drink, and they'll go, fair fucks, the guy came in and actually apologized.
which is it's interesting though, right? Because in the same way we were talking about like the potential shame of the thoughts of the social situation, like how much of those might be legit versus how much of those are imposed by outside sources that are not, really fair. Or in this regard here too, what happens when you come to realize that so much of the population, do they actually believe that apologies are real? Do they actually accept apologies, or do they?
I
Is
think,
how
when,
many people
if you
how
if
many
you
people
if
don't
you're
accept
seen
them?
to make a special effort to apologize in certain situations, yeah, then it is taken serious, and the fact, if you make, if it looks like you made it, if you do make a special effort to
A
go and
genuine,
make that apology, or, like,
yeah,
I'm sorry about last night, I was a fucking dickhead, and it won't happen.
yeah,
And sometimes, and you gain a greater respect than you had before they didn't know who the fuck you were initially.
yeah.
You
It
know,
can it can be challenging
they'll give
too.
you another chance.
It can be challenging too when something occurs that you don't think was offensive or a problem, and another person does, and then you're in this is it the word quagmire or stalemate where you
Hmm.
can't agree on, like, well, I thought we were friends or whatever, blah blah blah, and it's like,
If,
okay, well, I don't
if
see
it's
why you're,
adults and stuff like that, like, but it does depend on the direction of the joke. If it's a joke about something, or it's a joke directed at somebody,
yeah,
that's different. I mean, I think when amongst friends, there's always, you can always get away with a little bit of at somebody just for
yeah.
fun. Like, I mean, and they shouldn't take it personally, And if they do, then they're not that close of a friend.
Here's a question I have for Thomas, and I think I need to round this out in about 10 to
Go for it.
15 minutes here to get
Go for
ready
it.
for the week. Um, but Thomas, and take this how you want, dude. Don't go as deep as you want to, as surface level, whatever. So, with your dad, did did he ever admit that he was wrong on something? Like, on, like, maybe something.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that.
Yeah, I would say on like small stuff, like when we were out working in the yard, he'd measure something, cut it, be like sure of it, and then be like, "Well, I guess I was wrong." He's done that kind of stuff, but like his ideologies, his politics, his religion, no, he's absolutely right about all
Yeah,
My father was 100% right about everything all the time.
that.
And
yeah,
fucking story. There was
similar
no.
similar scenario. And so, my follow up to that, by the way, I hope that doesn't bring back any bad memories for you guys,
Ah,
but like, my question to that is, where in human thought, in our psychology, or whatever relevant topic, especially with adults who, they want to say things like leading by example, and they want, younger people or kids to listen to them and do certain stuff, but also often they don't lead by example. So that's part of the problem. But why is it? Is it a generational thing? Is it something about the human psyche that people, like certain types of people, just literally, they are taught from day one that ever being wrong is like literally the worst thing that can happen, and detrimental things can happen because of being wrong? Like, why do you guys think that is such a trope amongst,
what, being
I'll
scared
say,
of being wrong?
just the idea that, like, because I those kind of apologies and stuff like that, like, I feel like for some people they never hear that from their parents, and I
Um,
or from elders in the community, because they don't. Have you ever met an adult, like, in your life who you like, they actually apologized to you as, like, a kid or a younger person, and you're like, "Oh my god, they actually apologized about something," and they, like, meant it.
I'll tell you, my father was tough on me. I was the eldest, and Jesus, he was fucking tough on me. And but he got older, and softer, you could say. He never quite apologized, but he he did it. He kind of apologized in a non-verbal way. He became very
Mhm,
accepting of me, very supportive in that sense.
mhm.
So I think over time, like, he did that, but I don't think. I mean, he remembered like what the fuck he was like,
Yeah.
but I think, I think he was too nearly embarrassed to fucking apologize. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then my question there would be, like, where does the embarrassment come from, and why,
Social
and is it
pressure.
valid? But Thomas,
Brett.
what do you wanna say?
Knowing that
Social.
they were probably
It,
wrong, and
it, it's from social pressure when they're wrong, from their parents and their peers to not be wrong, because when you're wrong, you're made fun of, right?
Mm,
well, not
your
necessarily, but
intelligence is mocked or
I,
whatever else it is.
I think when they grew up in a completely different environment, when it was just like you just had to work your ass off and fucking.
I'm not saying their right and wrong is actual right and wrong, but they are inculturated to believe a certain sense of this is correct, this is not correct, just like different societies on Earth.
He got me into the music, but he didn't. He thought that being a professional musician was a terrible idea.
Mm.
Mm.
And it's like,
Took me.
maybe there's the concern about financial security and what it would, being on the road or whatever else it is, but then there's also the other side where it's like, yeah, but that's your thing. You feel.
He knew a couple of guys, and they were like alcoholics and stuff like that. So, and
So yeah, and you're weighing
uh,
those.
And
he
that's a
thought that
specific situation, though, Peter. That's super
Yeah,
specific.
it's a specific situation, but I think it was just it is. It's not like I know great musicians who just have what my mother used to call, "Are you getting a real job? When are you getting a real job?" So they got real jobs, like, like working for a bank or fucking whatever it was, and like a secure job. I mean, no job is really secure, like,
No,
but
yeah.
everybody's about a month away from homelessness.
but I know a lot of musicians that did that because they're not into that. If you're going to be a musician, you don't know what you're going to be earning from month to month. I have no idea what's coming in and what's not coming in.
It's really interesting to hear you say that about musicians, because it's not definitely of that level, but there have every now and again there have been, like, people I grew up with and whatnot who have implied, like, why did you decide to be a teacher? Like, you're not going to make enough money. You're not going to, you're barely ever going to make over, six figures. Like, why would you, that's like, and like, people will come in, we get it just like nurses get it as well. People will come in their 40s or 50s, be like, oh, well, I did this job over here and I didn't work out. So yeah, I'll just go into teaching. It'll be fine. And it's like,
But like
do
my
you really know
girlfriend's
what
a
you're
teacher,
getting
and
into?
she spent 10 years in fucking university. She's a degree in psychology, she's a degree in psychoanalysis, and she's a master's degree in education. Which is, I love being a teacher. It's all the fucking time off because Easter holidays 2 weeks, Christmas 2 weeks, 2 months in the summer.
It
It's so
is one of the benefits, but it is, I will tell you, throughout the year, you're dealing with many different things that, I could list them for you, but it's, sometimes with the holidays and stuff like that, you are literally recovering from, the number of times that my peers have had to call Child Protective Services, or a student who potentially was thinking of harming themselves or something of that
Yeah,
nature.
you're gonna get that with like high school. You're high school, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, she's a primary or what's called grade school over here.
yeah.
So she
It's
generally
there.
deals with like 5, 6, 7, 8. That's that kind of range, and that's what she likes. She's done special needs stuff as well, but I mean, she doesn't like teaching teenagers.
Hmm. I don't mind it. I would say to any of them that might watch this show or whoever it might be that you know one of the things I would actively want to combat is the messages online on the different programs where it's just endless materialism. It's endless stuff that doesn't allow for good thoughts about themselves.
Well, I'll tell you
uh,
what they need to actually do is get out into the world
and
and
go experience it.
not rely on anything that's powered by electricity and learn about each other face to face.
Yeah,
And that is a huge thing that a lot of kids are missing out on. I think just get out and be together, be physically together, and enjoy each other's company. Fall out together, make up together.
yeah.
Well,
Is there any like we've gone a long way. We're almost at 2 hours right now. Is
yep.
there any like closing thoughts you have on thinking or anything
No,
that we think would be a good closing point?
I
Or
would just steal. I would steal Don Don's statement. Stay thinking. I think that's pretty important. And I say go crazy with it. Think as much as you possibly can because you may only get one chance through this rodeo. So I would think as much as I possibly could and
Be
use that
prepared to
work that brain out. Work
make
that brain out.
be prepared to make as many mistakes as you can, and be
Yeah, you're
prepared
gonna
to
make
realize that
mistakes.
you've made mistakes and you need to correct them
Yep.
and when
and
you
go
learn
again.
from them,
And
and when
look,
you learn from them,
yeah, like build your house, tear it down, rebuild it, tear it down,
Get
rebuild it.
used to doing that.
Yeah, and do
Yep.
it all the time, and
Yep.
don't stop at any point.
Yep. Don't give up.
We were
you
good.
learn you learn.
I remember Sting saying something like, he said, if you're not changing, you're not thinking."
That's right. And everything's changing. So yeah, that's a good spot to stop on. Did you have any final words, Brett, for the audience?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I really appreciate the time with you guys tonight, and that
Yeah.
you know that at some point, if you really like both of our friends Peter and Thomas have said here, like being able to think and keep trying new things and such like that, you not only explore who you are, but when you're able to bypass certain things of like the fear of failure to a certain degree, you a world opens up that otherwise would not be there. And that thought, those kind of thoughts and that kind of mindset has really changed my life for the better. But I really appreciate everybody's time tonight, and we'll see you in future shows where Thomas explores other topics, thought, science, and whatever else it might be.
Be prepared to
We'll
fail,
do this
maybe.
again. We'll do this again and bring Peter back too.
Sounds good.
But maybe not full of Jameson this next time.
You're fine. You're fine. All right, guys.
Good
Well,
night.
let's cut it there, and everybody have a good night. We love you, and subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. Good night.
All right.